And for this week's Think Tank Central, we're focused on growing calls to hold Saudi Arabia to account, not only for the suspected killing of that D.C.-based Saudi journalist, but for what many in Congress view as the disproportionate civilian death toll in the Saudi-led war in Yemen. Joining me from our Washington studios, Giorgio Cafiero, CEO of Gulf State Analytics, and from Capitol Hill, Joe Gould, congressional affairs correspondent for Defense News. Joe, let's start with you. And even before this latest Khashoggi scandal, key players on the Hill had effectively frozen out new arms sales to the kingdom. But what about those billions and billions of dollars worth of done deals that have already been cleared by Congress that are in the pipeline? Are they at risk?
My money is on no for the time being, but you know, could Donald Trump muscle through $14.5 billion in defense deals that he wants to see go ahead? Yes, he could. But the optics right now, with the of doing business as usual with the Saudi government, while they're under investigation for the murder of a Washington Post columnist, right, makes it seem untenable.
But there is,
you alluded to the.
Right, the freeze on new arms sales notifications, that's off the table for the time being.
I would say that that for now, Senator Bob Menendez, who's the top Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has a hold on precision-guided munition sales and has for some months, as you said, connected with the civilian death toll in Yemen. I don't see him lifting that anytime soon. Not to get into all the technicalities of the arms transfer process here in the United States, but the administration could override that hold. But to do so, I think, would come at a significant political expense. My guess is that we'll see some kind of maybe sanctions on the Saudi regime that vents some of the frustration that you're seeing on Capitol Hill.
Let's move it over
at some point in the future, arms sales continue.
Thanks, Joe. Let's move it over to Giorgio. And what do you make of the president's very stern message delivered earlier this week by his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo? Was this designed to calm the critics, you think? Or is it perhaps the beginning of the end of the bromance between the Trump family and the House of Salman?
I don't think that is going to be coming to an end anytime soon. There is no doubt, however, that the Trump administration finds itself in an extremely messy and difficult situation right now. As Trump has made it clear, he doesn't believe that this case should result in the freezing or canceling of major arms sales to Saudi Arabia. There's no doubt that the Trump administration is going to continue viewing Iran as the #1 threat in the region, and thus the White House will continue to place a lot of value on the U.S.-Saudi relationship. But Donald Trump absolutely has to make it seem like he is doing everything he can to push forward for results from the investigation and hold the Saudi state accountable if the conclusion is that the Saudi state was responsible for the murder of this journalist. But quite frankly, I think Trump is trying to give MBS a lot of the benefit of the doubt for the time being and trying to extend the amount of time that the Saudis have to sort of get their story together.
Absolutely. Let's move it back to Joe. And speaking about this bromance, this unusually tight relations between the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and the Saudi Crown Prince. We know that there's a major arms deal in the works, $15 billion plus for the THAAD missile defense systems. Can you tell us, first of all, why this deadline might have been missed, and more importantly, just for anecdotal elucidation, what was that phone call about when Kushner was meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince and he picked up the phone to the CEO of Lockheed Martin to shave the price off of that multi-billion-dollar package?
Right. So you're talking about the news that the New York Times broke that Jared Kushner, in the midst of negotiating a $110 billion arms deal between Saudi Arabia and the United States, reached out to Lockheed Martin CEO Marillyn Hewson to ask for a discount on the THAAD air and missile defense system, which they agreed to. I think it was something like a $3.5 billion discount. It's unusual, not illegal. The United States does provide discounts in arms deals, but in this case, you know, I think that the heat on Capitol Hill is probably not going to extend quite as quite as much to THAAD. After all, it's a defensive system, and Lockheed Martin has a fair amount of clout here on Capitol Hill. But it is still under negotiations at the moment.
Let's ask Giorgio, with his finger so firmly on the pulse of what's going on in the Gulf. Is this the Saudis allowed the deadline to pass for signing a contract on those THAAD missile defense systems? Do you think this is a way more of gaining more discounts out of Washington, or does the kingdom truly, is it truly eyeing procurement and deployment of a Russian system, the Russian S-400?
Yes, right now, as the regime in Riyadh is expecting some major problems in relations with Washington, I think Saudi is attempting to sort of hedge its bets, and this is the context we have in which Riyadh is moving closer to Moscow on some issues, and cooperation is deepening between the two capitals right now. Of course, the kingdom has been extremely vulnerable to attacks from the Houthis in Yemen, and so this also factors into the reasons why the Saudis are looking to this Russian system. As you've mentioned, though, the fact is that Russia and Iran have very close relations too, and I think this is going to limit the extent to which the kingdom is able to deepen its partnership with Russia. Also, Russia has a very close relationship with Qatar, and the Qataris have also been looking to Moscow for this defense system. So while we can certainly expect the recent fallout from the Khashoggi case to prompt Saudi to diversify its alliances with the Washington-Riyadh alliance under question, it's a very complicated geopolitical context in which the kingdom is looking to Russia.
Absolutely. Joe, what are you hearing up on the Hill about meaningful efforts to invoke the War Powers Act or otherwise force the administration to back away from its support of the Saudi and Emirati-led war against, as Giorgio mentioned, the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen?
Senator Bernie Sanders has announced that he plans to revive a measure that would invoke the Congress's war powers to end U.S. support, military support for the Saudi-led coalition conducting airstrikes in Yemen. The justification last time around was the Saudi coalition's bombing that killed Yemeni civilians.
Absolutely.
That measure several months ago was tabled 55-44. So the question is whether the Khashoggi matter has altered the math somewhat. We know, as of this morning, that Senator Jack Reed, who's the top Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee, who voted to table it last time, is changing his vote this time. But the question is, what happens in the House, which is dominated? Both the House and the Senate are controlled by Republicans. Will they get the votes? It's a big question mark right now, and the midterm elections are sure to alter the math.
Excellent point. Giorgio, last word. Hold on. Last word, Giorgio, and that is there any public opinion gathering in either the Saudi Kingdom or the UAE to slow down its efforts in the war in Yemen?
I think that as a consequence of the Trump presidency, both Saudi Arabia and the UAE feel emboldened to fight against what they see as extensions of Iranian influence throughout the Arabian Peninsula more aggressively. At the same time, there are huge economic and security tolls on both of these Gulf states. And I think the pragmatic minds in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi understand that there cannot be a military solution to this crisis in Yemen. And ultimately, some concessions will need to be made to the Houthis on both the part of Saudi Arabia and the UAE. But unfortunately, we're just not there yet. And I think both the Saudis and Emiratis believe that it's still in their interest to keep on
keeping
fighting
on
the Houthis.
Yes.
Unfortunately so.